You are listening to Eastmans Fly Cast, an adventure fly fishing specific podcast covering travel, tactics, and next level insight. Now your host, Brian Barney.
Hey, what's happening, guys? Got a brand new Eastmans Fly Cast for you. We'll get right into it. Just want to thank one of my sponsors, Avid Max. Avid Max has a great internet retail store with a easy-to-navigate website as well as a physical location right outside of Denver. They staff a knowledgeable group of passionate individuals that can help you make the right decisions for any different system that you plan on fishing. So they have a great selection of rods, reels, lines, tippet. They've got flies, including nymphs, streamers, dry flies, flies for salt, as well as a great clearance section and apparel line. Avid Max has absolutely everything for any fly fishing system that you're headed to. So if you're in the market for anything fly fishing, make sure to check out their website at avidmax.com. And with that, let's get into this podcast. So going to sit down for a solo again this week. Man, I've just been swamped here. Just trying to keep up with everything and construction. Just getting back from a big trip, headed out to Hawaii. Man, Hawaii has some big bonefish and some great fishing in different parts. I fly fished it before for bonefish, and it's a little bit different than like standard saltwater fishing. So I really enjoy fishing saltwater. I wish I'm trying to find ways where it's more inexpensive that I can afford to do it. Those flat boats are great. Like I've been down to Key West and fished before. But it's nearly $600 a day for those flats boats. As those guys have fuel and they're super knowledgeable. And so, like chasing tarpon or something like that just doesn't get any better than going out on one of those boats. But, the cool thing about fishing the flats is that it takes you to some pretty neat places. So I'm looking at doing a trip with my family down to the Bahamas this winter. And this will be a great trial run as, they have a bunch of beaches that you can just walk and fish, like a do-it-yourself. You can get a license and get a VRBO down there like I'm going to do, and then go walk these beaches and fish for bonefish. So I'm super excited to go do that this winter. Hawaii also has some decent bone fishing, or some great bone fishing, actually. It's just... It's different. Some of those flats, they're really tough to see into, really tough to see tailing fish. So the fishing that I've done in Hawaii has been almost blind fishing where, you're kind of like trout where you're just walking out to a good flat, throwing casts and stripping back instead of sight fishing these. Like the real fun of the flats is the sight fishing. Like it's this combination between hunting and fishing where you walk these beach lines or you're in a flats boat, and you're really looking down under the surface to, the bottom can be anything from white sands to rocky bottom to seagrass that kind of waves around in the waves. And you're looking to spot these fish and then throw to them. And it's such a high pressure throw. You see a big tarpon and it's headed in a direction, and you get one cast to throw it, in front of that fish and by that fish so you can strip it by. And man, it's exciting. When they start coming on your fly and start following it and you think they're going to eat, it just doesn't get any more thrilling. And the strips, they're real long, fast strips. Like you can't strip fast enough for those saltwater fish. Also, got to get really good at your double haul. Like I thought I was good at double hauling, but my little trout double haul just doesn't cut it for the salt. Like they want you to double haul, and double haul type of cast. Like I'm sure most of you guys have heard it or know what it is, but basically it's getting your line speed moving. So as you backcast with your rod, you're also pulling the line with your free hand down. And so as you cast back, you pull down, and it gets that line speed moving. And then as you go forward to make your cast, you also pull down on the line. So that's the double haul, is those two pulls. A pull when you're back casting, and then a pull when you're shooting forward. And the longer and bigger the pole, the haul, like the quicker it gets that line speed going, and the farther it'll throw that line. It's a critical. It's a critical technique when you're fly fishing, and not only for salt. I mean, salt, you got to be so good at your double haul to throw against wind, throw accurately, throw long casts, and things of that nature. But I find it like really beneficial and helpful, even fishing these western rivers. Just getting your cast where you want it, casting against the wind. Man, it's just a huge benefit. And when I get guys in the boat that don't know how to double haul, they're really handicapped in these western rivers. So it's something that you can practice in your yard or practice outside, is just getting the feel for that double haul. And it's all like this rhythm. So until you're used to it, it seems a little awkward. But once you get it down, it's something that you do every cast. So in the salt, it's super important, so I love fishing that salt, and just want to travel and do more of that. There's so many big adventures I want to go on, and big fly fishing adventures that God, they just look like an absolute riot. So going to do that Bahamas trip. Definitely going to get out for steelhead. I missed it this year. Just got to make time. Life gets so busy. You almost got to cut time out of your schedule or just plan for it and go. But definitely going to do those couple trips this winter. Man, I had just a riot. Last podcast, I talked about traveling to all these different western rivers. And that's the cool thing, is that living out west, there's just different states and different systems, and it's just absolutely endless. Like, I've been exploring for 20 years, and I'm still finding new systems and new things all the time, and you have to be creative in today's day and age. And a lot of these systems, it's timing on them, and if you can figure out or dial in the timing, you can just get some red hot fishing. So like, I've got a notebook that I keep on these different systems, and nowadays too, with the pictures that I have, it catalogs them and puts a date in them, so I can look back in my phone and see when the Yellowstone was fishing good, or see when I got it on the big hole, or see when the big bucks came off on this system. And so I can kind of time my fishing trips from that. And, it takes going to these different systems and striking out or putting your days in and really learning them. But once you hit it right, then you have this date in your phone, in your calendar, that you can look back on and kind of plan a trip around it. So I know I'm planning a bunch of trips for next season on a bunch of different systems to try to time them up right and try to chase some of these big browns. But yeah, I just love living out west where we can travel to these systems. It's inexpensive. We can camp and just spend like this awesome quality time with buddies. I mean, one of my favorite trips of the year was like taking that wall tent and going with Dylan, and going and hitting some of these different systems and really fishing them hard. So it's just an absolute riot. I'm going to make sure that my gear's all dialed in and ready to rock and roll again for springtime fishing, late winter, things of that nature, and go hit a bunch of these systems, because there's so many great places to adventure to and to fish. So definitely want to do more of that. Like, I'd love to do one of these, like the like that Golden Dorado trip, like down to South America, would just be unreal. I think it's something that I just gotta save for, like start a savings account just for fly fishing. Where save up some money and then just pull the trigger, because these trips, they are fairly expensive, but it's something I want to do once in my life for sure. So yeah, super excited about that. That Bahamas trip will be really fun this winter, and my girls can kind of sleep in, and I can go early in the morning. And when you're fishing those flats, you're trying to time the tide. So the high tide comes in, and it brings the bonefish with it, or those predatory fish with it that come into those flats, and then they hunt those bait fish in those flats. And so you're trying to time it on a high tide coming in, and so you really get dialed into the tides. But yeah, gonna fish a bunch of early mornings and then get back and hang out with the family the rest of the day. So we'll see. Sometimes these combo trips can be a real challenge, but I think it's gonna work out great for this place. And so I have done it in Hawaii before. They've got some great bone fishing out there. I just haven't found it yet. I found some good locations that I fish that I know hold bonefish. And there's, I've been offered like help from a couple buddies out there. Most of the time, I'm trying to combo it and trying to hunt and fish, or trying to hunt and fish and do family time. And so usually I just got limited time to go out there and try it out. So I haven't killed it out there yet, but there are some guys that get them really good, and there's some big bonefish out there too. So I would like to dial that in, as I do make quite a few trips out there, as I've got some really good buddies that I've made friends with and hang out with out there, and they've helped guide me in the right direction too, and put me on the right places where they do catch bonefish. And like I say, I've been offered by a guy out there, captain out there, to take me out, which would be super fun. So I need to pull the trigger on that as well. But living out west, it's like a real opportunity to go travel to these different systems, and I just love fishing for brown trout. The other thing that would be super fun would be like Atlantic salmon. Like, I love sea run fish. I love steelhead, and actually the runs are doing better this year. At least the runs at Kings, I hear, in the Puget Sound are doing good. Which, the Puget Sound has some great fishing out there. Great fishing like late summer. I've always wanted to take a trip back out there and fish. So I do the steelhead season almost every year. Last year I kind of missed out on it, but usually head out there and do like February or do March. Those are good months for the run. Continues into April, and so I love that winter steelhead fishing. Just fires me up, and I love fishing rivers. Trying to fish still water more and more, but some of the still water they have fishing out there around the Puget Sound, they have hundreds of miles of coastline out there, and I've read about it quite a few times, like fishing for these silvers out there. And so you walk like the beach lines of the Puget Sound, and you throw out these flies and strip them back in July and August, in those months, like those silvers are running out there in the Puget Sound, and they'll take a fly out there. Just be a riot. They'd fight so hard, and it's fairly close to me. Again, this is an easy to do adventure that I can do, that I just need to pull the trigger on. Like, years just keep clicking off, and there's so many great places to explore. Like, definitely need to plan more of these. But that Puget Sound has been on my list for a long time. So head out there with a buddy and try to catch some of those silvers or some of those kings off those bank lines out there would be really fun. So I definitely have to try that. My buddy, jumping back and forth, but jumping back to Hawaii, my buddy Janus out there has a boat, and gosh, he's been catching. They've got nicknames for all the different fish, so sometimes I don't know what he's talking about. I should have gone more in depth, but we were trying to do a trip off his boat and go fish lanai, and so I've done some fishing with him before. And you guys know where my heart lies. Like, I'm a fly fisherman by nature, but I've been out with him, like, doing some jigging. He's got some different spots, and so go out with a rod and reel and then jig out there. And we caught a tuna one time, or a type of tuna out there that we kept and cooked up or whatever. And it's fun, but you're kind of jigging really hard and reeling really hard and catch some fish. But now he's onto this new fishing where he's fishing like the eddies and bank lines of Lanai. So they live on Maui, takes the boat over to Lanai, and then he cruises like the bank line, and he's throwing a Rapala like into the whitewater, into the breaks in the whitewater, and catching these jacks that are hitting on these super aggressive takes. Man, it just sounds like a riot. And so I want to bring my fly rod out. Like, if they'll eat a Rapala, I'm sure I can tie a fly that those things will eat. But it's like dang near in the crashing waves and in the rocks and in these features on this bank line that you're throwing in there and then retrieving and getting these fish to eat. I think he was calling them jacks. I'm not sure what they are, but just super hard fighting fish that eat really good. That he's catching in that surf. So I was bummed I didn't get a chance to go try it out. It sounds like an absolute riot. So I definitely want to do that next time I'm out there and bring my fly rod and see if I can get him that way. That sounds like fun. But a bunch of different adventures that a guy can go on, and it's just about pulling the trigger and going on a few of these things. And as much as I love this saltwater, these big adventures, like too, it's exploring what's right around us. I mean, I live out west. There's so many different systems. Like even my home state, I'm still exploring, Montana, but there's so much to explore in Idaho and Wyoming and even further south. And so, yeah, it's just about making the time and pulling the trigger on some of these adventures. So I'm definitely going to plan a big year of fishing. I had one of my best seasons I've had, great spring season. Just ran short on time as we got into these summer months, but it's a strange year out here. Like if there was a good year to not be fishing really hard in the summer months, it would be this year. Man, are we in just an absolute drought here out west. Rivers have been running at minimum flows. Didn't quite get our snowpack. It's hot. Right now, Montana's full of smoke in July, which is super early for that. And the water temps are just getting up there. They have hoot owl restrictions on a lot of these rivers. Which basically you can only fish the morning till about 2 o'clock. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some closures, but nothing is tougher on these fish than warm water. And so, giving these trout a break is a good thing on a lot of these systems, but there's still like great fishing that you can go do. It doesn't mean you have to stop fishing. Like it's, fish these systems early or these bigger rivers that have cooler water. Also the high mountain lakes. Like I've really got more into that, and these lakes can grow such big fish. And so a lot of times my setup on these lakes, I'll pull streamers, and sometimes I'll get some eats on streamers, which is really fun pulling and retrieving. A deadly tactic on these lakes is to nymph fish these things. So to nymph fish them using the same indicator and like 2-fly setup. So the deal is like my setup when I run a nymphing setup, I run pretty heavy leader up top, and then I'll taper it down. And really, the fish around me aren't too line spooky. I don't have to go down to the 5X, 6X unless I'm fishing a tiny dry fly or something of that nature. But most of the time, I can fish a heavier leader. And so when I'm running this nymph setup, like I may start at 0X on the top section. May go a foot or two on that. That's what I'm going to tie my indicator on. I really like using those thingamabobs. Just put your line through the hole, wrap it around the thingamabob, pull tight, and it'll stay right there, and then you can move it up and down. And nymphing is all about the depth, and that's fishing rivers or lakes. So in lakes, you got to try to figure out where the depth is, where you can get your flies as close to the bottom as you can, but you don't want them to snag on bottom. And so usually, like what I'll do, if you're on a boat, it's real easy. You can just lower down like a weight until it hits the bottom. You can get a depth and then set your flies, your bottom fly about 6 inches above that, and then cast out and just let it kind of drift naturally in the water, whether that's the wind pushing it or any of the current. It'll just kind of do a natural drift. And if you're fishing the bank line, you may have to mess around with it a little bit. As you throw it out, when it catches bottom, then you need to go shorter. If it never bumps bottom, then you need to go longer, and you just kind of test it out until you find the right depth. But running that heavy leader up top that I'm tying my indicator on, and then I'll taper down. And when I taper down, I'm just using a blood knot and tapering down. And then about 12 inches from my first fly, up from my first fly, I'll do a blood knot, and that's where I'll tie my weight. And usually when I'm nymphing, my go-to will be good to go to like 2X or so. And 2X is about 10-pound test or so. There's 2X about 8-pound test, 8 to 10-pound test, somewhere in there to my first fly. And then I'll run, if I'm fishing rivers, I'll usually fish like a smaller diameter, smaller leader length down to my second fly. So 2X to my first fly, 3X to my second fly. And that 3X then, if that bottom fly snags, it'll bust that line and save my top fly. So that's why I run that setup. But on lakes, you're not snagging the bottom very often, and so you can run 2X to your first fly, 2X to your second fly. I love using like balanced leeches in uh, these still waters. So first fly will be like a balanced leech, and then I do real good off like little pheasant tails or little chronomids. Little chronomids are like little midge patterns, basically. And they're different sizes in these systems, but I like to run like a balanced leech, and then my second fly I run a chronomid, and and then just go out, and then in these rivers, it's tough to read. Like, it's so easy to read water in a river and where the fish should be living. You're looking for the pillows of water that doesn't have current through them, and then those fish will sit on that easy side and eat off that current line. So, they sit on a lot of seams and things of that nature. But fishing rivers 20 years, you just get a feel for it, reading water and where the fish should be, and have confidence in where you're throwing it. Lakes are a little bit different to me. You got to figure out, like, I'm always looking for the deepest water in lakes. That seems to serve me well, like looking for drop-offs and looking for rock points that go out and things of that nature, and trying to target those areas and those places. So usually look for the deepest side. I'll start fishing there and just kind of look at the lake. Like, a lot of times there'll be an inlet stream. Fish love to be around these inlet streams. They love to be around, the rocky points. And a lot of the times you can look down into these lakes and see fish. And, man, there's so many lakes to go fish. If you want to get away from the pressure in the summertime, that's the way to get away from the pressure. And I mean, like, some of the most beautiful places I've ever been are these high mountain lakes. I've actually had one that I've been running into lately, and bringing my rod in there, and there's some great big cutthroat in there. So I'm going to continue to fish that and see if I can bring out one of these giant cutthroat out of those out of that system. But man, I mean, I've been all over Montana backpacking, and some of these lakes are just untouched. There's no humans in them. I've also, like, talk about other states and being different places. I've been to different places in Nevada, like the Ruby Mountains in there, which are just this beautiful mountain range, and hiked up to those high mountain lakes. And I've seen trout in there that'll go, trophy size, like 5 to 10 pounds in there swimming around. So there's a bunch of different systems. It's just about looking at these systems, making a game plan, and getting into them. So definitely need to do more still water fishing, and this is a good year for it. And I like to get away from the pressure in the summertime. This Madison, it is a great river, and I love this thing, and love being able to live on it and fish it whenever I can. But in that same breath, like, summertime, there's guides all over, from not only this area but surrounding areas in Idaho that come up to fish this thing, and they fish it hard. And it's just a different experience. Like, I don't mind dealing with some fishing pressure, but in that same breath, like, it's really nice to get away and have your own experience. And so high mountain lakes are perfect for that. So definitely have some lakes around me that I like to fish, but need to do some more exploring as well. And these lakes, they can just grow such big fish. They've got such a great food source there. So I think that's like summertime, like, where I lean towards is fishing a lot of these high mountain lakes. And there's also, like, there's a bunch of little river systems too that don't get as much pressure, which are nice to get on. Places that don't have guiding on them that I can go explore. That Beaverhead's a great one. The Ruby sits right around me. The Ruby's great. The Boulder, gosh, what's that one? I was just over there for Western Hunting Summit. I always forget about the name of that thing. It dumps into the Yellowstone over there. Just a great little system. And those little systems, like a single man boat, is fairly inexpensive. They build like those single man pontoon boats, and then I've got like my dirt bike carrier on the back of my truck where I can drop my dirt bike off on my shuttle spot, drive my truck up with the single man boat, and then float down to my dirt bike, take my dirt bike back up, so I can run my own shuttle. But those single man boats will run these small systems, and nobody's running that program, or not very many guys. God, that system comes out of the Wilsot. Still trying to remember that. It's a great brown trout fishery. But a lot of these systems have very low pressure, and so I enjoy fishing these. And it's surprising, like the size of fish that can grow up in these systems. So definitely fishing those smaller systems, fishing still water, and summertime. Summertime is meant for dry flies, like that last podcast I did. And right now we're coming right into hopper season, which is fun. And a lot of these still waters will fish really good with a dry fly as well in the middle of summer. They'll take a hopper really well. And two, it's just paying attention to the ecosystem in there and what bugs are coming off. Oh, excuse me. Wow. Paying attention to the ecosystem and what bugs are coming off. And two, in these rivers, like, looking at the dry fly hatches that are coming off and matching those is important. Also, like, just walking out in that river and rolling over rocks and looking at what type of nymphs are crawling around and trying to match those. It's a great way to, like, tap into that ecosystem. Love fishing streamers as always as they hunt for big fish, and so a lot of these streamer patterns, I'm trying to represent a smaller fish, and in a system that has a lot of browns, it seems like a yellow color works really well as it mimics a brown trout. White's always a great one. White's a great bait fish, and my go-to colors are usually white, black, and olive, but yellow has done really well for me this year. I've actually caught some of my biggest fish on yellow this year, so definitely not forgetting about yellow as I'm out fishing. And the setup with those streamers is fairly simple. I'm using a weighted line, and I just size the line to the rod I'm using, and I oversize it a little bit. Can't remember exact grain sizes as I'm talking to you, but like just a weighted line that has a running line attached, and usually it's going to be like 250 grains to 300 grains, somewhere in there for a 6-7 weight rod. And then off that weighted line, I'm tying on tippet, and I usually just go from the tip of my fingers to the middle of my chest, so about 2.5 feet or so. And so I run 2.5 feet on of tippet, and I run thick stuff on those streamers. Most of those streamers are moving, the trout aren't line sensitive, and so that doesn't seem to matter. And so I'll usually run 10, 12, even 15-pound test to that streamer. And so the knots, today's fly lines usually have a loop at the end, and so I'll tie it like an improved, not an improved cinch, it's a improved loop knot on it, and it's fairly easy. And nowadays with the internet, you can look up all these knots, but your knot tying is really important to your fly fishing. I know when I first started, I didn't know all the correct knots, and you lose a ton of fish just not by not having or practicing strong knots. So, this is something you can work on at your house in the evening time. I know when I'm fishing salt, I'm always working on my knots to make sure I've got strong knots. So I like that improved loop knot up top, and then go loop to loop, and then I go 2.5 feet, and then I also do an improved loop knot to my streamer. And what that does is it lets that streamer move back and forth and kick a little bit more with that loop knot instead of an improved cinch knot. So I really like that. And as far as like connecting line to line, like I don't buy any tapered leaders for dry flies anymore. I just make my own. So I taper it down, depending on what type of leader I'm fishing, and also what length. I usually start at about 8-foot leader or so, and so I'll do 4 feet of a heavier test, and then go 2 feet of lighter, and then 2 feet of lighter yet to get down to my 8-pound or whatever I want to use for that system. And I'm just using blood knots to tie those. And blood knots is a super strong knot. And like I say, these are knots that you can practice in the evening and make sure you're dialed on your knot tying. And it's just going to ensure that you don't bust off a lot of fish. So I'll tie my own knots for these things, make my own leaders, and it also saves money. I think, they charge you about $5 a leader, and it just doesn't seem to matter. I get in my one buddy's boat, and he guides on a bunch of these different systems. And his clients will show up with this expensive leader, and he'll just take his scissors to it and chop it off at the top, and then tie his own leader. So just take this $5 to $10 leader and just snip it right off of the client's line, and then tie on his leader that he wants to fish, because they just work really well, and you can get the right lengths you want. And you just don't need that big tapered leader like that. But pretty funny. Imagine showing up with your leaders and just having them clip off. I've had them do it to me before as well. Yeah, that's kind of the setup that I'm using for a lot of these fish. And so I'll build my own dry fly leaders and my own nymph leaders. I'll build streamers. I just tie on. There's no knots in that, and go straight to that leader. And as far as lines, like, I love that weighted sinking tip line for throwing for streamers, but that's about the only one I use that sink line for. All my other fishing is done with floating line. Really like the Scientific Anglers making great lines, Rio. But out here, you really want like a weight forward line to be able to throw against that wind. So using a floating line then for nymph setups and for dry flies. And then, just tying my leader on there. And as far as nymphing goes, you really adjust it to the length of the system that you're fishing. So we talked about lake setups. For river setups, your flies drag behind your indicator. So, if it's 4 feet deep, you actually don't want a 4-foot leader. You want a 5-foot leader, because it's going to be tailing behind your indicator. And really, nymphing, it's technical. You want to read the drift of your flies. It's more about the presentation than it is the fly itself. I mean, a good fly will fish really well for you, but if you know how to fish nymphs, you'll do far better. So it's like this technique that you have to learn that, you adjust the length of your leader, or you adjust it by the drift of your bugs. So if you're not ticking bottom at all, you want to extend your leader length. If you are ticking bottom or hanging up on bottom, then you want to go with a shorter leader length. And I usually describe it from my indicator to my weight. And then at my weight, I'm going to have that blood knot go 12 to 16 inches to my first fly, 12 to 16 inches to my back fly. So basically, if I'm fishing 4 foot of water, I'm going to want 5 feet from my indicator to my weight, and then I'll trail my bugs beyond that. If I'm hanging up, then I'll shorten up. If I'm not touching bottom or ticking bottom at all, then I'll lengthen up. And so every hole and every run is different that you're fishing. And so it's good to just find like a happy medium that works well for you in the system that you're fishing. And then, if you get to a hole and you're not tapping bottom, just extend that. It's amazing. You can have the right flies on, all the right setup, and if you're not fishing that hole correctly or not getting your bugs down to the bottom, you just won't catch any fish. And then you lengthen that leader by a foot, or the other thing you can do is you can add a weight as well. So you can adjust it by leader length. You can also adjust it by weight. By putting on weight or taking off weight will affect the drift, but it's finding that right drift with that nymph setup. And once you can find that, then you're fishing. And you also have to be really good at your mends. And so anytime your fly line is pulling on your indicator, it's pulling your bugs off the bottom. And it takes a few seconds to get your bugs to sink to the bottom. And so anytime that you're pulling your indicator that's pulling those lines, you're not down where the fish are. So you have to get really good at throwing your drift upstream. And then I'll just kind of strip down till it gets close to me, and then I'll throw a mend upstream of it. And so you're throwing your fly line above that indicator so it's not dragging. And then you have to continually mend. It's not just one mend. You may have to mend that thing 3, 4, 5 times. And then as it gets below you, like a 45 setup, you want to throw a big mend at it and then start feeding it line. And you can feed it line way down below you. And so the better you get, the more effective you are, because you cover so much water. You can cover, 200 feet of water or 300 feet of water with your drift. And so I really like those long drifts for figuring out where those fish are and being able to target them. As far as dry fly leaders, it just depends. I like a short leader will give you really good control of your fly. So fishing these salmon flies out of the boat where you're really hucking it under brush and things of that nature. And salmon fly, I'll use 0X, which is 15-pound test. It just doesn't seem to matter. It's a big fly, turbulent water, usually has some color, and the fish just are not line shy at all. And so I like to fish a shorter leader with those salmon flies because it's real responsive. So I'm around 6 to 7 feet with that setup. With the smaller dry flies, fishing more still water, you need more distance from your fly line to that fly. Also, like the big flies will mend really well. Salmon flies, hoppers, foam flies, things of that nature. The smaller flies, they don't mend as well. You throw them in and it may sink that fly. And so you kind of get one cast, one drift out of it. But other dry fly setups, I'd say as a standard is I usually start at about 8 feet or so and then adjust from there, whether I need more control or whether I need a longer leader length. And, I was telling you guys about like that Betis hatch that I hit on that system, where I was having to fish 12 or 14-foot leader as it was, dang near still water, really slow moving, and I had to get my fly line way away from that fly to be able to get those strikes. So I'm not afraid to go way longer on my leader length on that deal to try to get into those fish. And then that floating is super important with those dry flies, is having a good floating. They have like what is that? They've got this floating now that sits in a like a little sealed bottle that you'll dip your fly into, and it's just a liquid. You can actually make your own. I think when I heard of it at first, like the fly guides were starting to make their own. I can't remember how they make it, with gasoline or kerosene or something, and I'm not sure, but they sell it now. I think it's got some silly name like Viagra for your flies or Triple X or whatever it is. But there's a bunch of floatants on the market that work really well. But have a good floating when you're fishing dry flies. That's half the battle, is just keep your fly floating. And when you catch a fish, it'll drown your fly where, then you have to put some more floating on it. And I'm also not opposed to running a dry fly dropper either. Like running some of these big flies like, hoppers are turning on right now, or big foam flies, whether that's a golden stone or salmon fly or something of that nature, and then use that as your indicator. And then down below that, go 16 inches or 20 inches and then run a nymph down below it. And it's a super effective method of fishing. It really works well to do that dry dropper. And certain times of the year, when those fish are really sitting in those shallow water flats and things, it works really well. So I'll use that as well on these different systems, and it works well for me. But yeah, it's just super fun fishing these western rivers and having these techniques at your disposal. And it's like anything. It's like the more you do it, the better you get. And so the more you're fly fishing, just the more you're going to learn. And it's not killing them every time you're out. It's learning and enjoying your time on the system every time you're out. And there's nothing more peaceful than being on a river or being on a high mountain lake that you hiked into. It's so fun, but it's problem solving too. It's looking out there, seeing fish that are coming up from dry flies, figuring out what they're eating, or figuring out the nymphs they're eating. And I also, in that still water, like I'll pull some streamers, but I noticed too that they don't eat like a lot of those big streamers that I'll throw in the rivers. Like I tend to go with like a smaller little leech pattern, seems to work really well. And I got given a couple leeches by this lake guide one time that fishes like these red leeches and orange-tailed leeches and things. They're really strange-looking flies. I don't even know what they represent, like probably like a small rainbow trout or like a small brook trout or brown trout, something of that nature. And using like chenille for the body, wrapping it on there. And just this little fly and throwing it out and stripping it back sometimes would just kill them. And these high mountain lakes right around me that hold a bunch of cutthroat, they love eating those little red flies. And I think because those cutthroat have those red on them, and little orange flies, just bright little flies, they seem to eat those really well for me. But it's it is just problem solving, getting into these systems and figure out what they're eating, and be willing to change up your setup and change up your fly, and really see what you can get some eats and get some takes on, and then learn from it. And the more you get out, the more you're going to learn, the more confidence you're going to build. And it's also, it's like taking these lessons that the river and the lakes give you. It's really taking in the information, learning from it, and getting better. Like, it's the fun thing about fly fishing is it's an evolution. Like, we never stop learning. It's so challenging, and I think that's why I love it. Is I love the challenge of it. I love being able to try to solve the puzzle of what they're eating today or what they want to eat. It's so much excitement and thrill when you do hook up or you get one to eat, and you had the right theory or thoughts on it. And so, man, it's just getting out there a bunch and trying to learn as much as we can and be the best fishermen we can be, this constant evolution. And so really it's just getting on the water, and we all get busy with work and family and things, which is, which is super important to me. But it's also like getting out and finding stress relief. It's when you're focused on fishing and thinking about fishing, it's like a one, like this one mindset that you have, and when you're so focused on this task at hand of trying to fly fish and tie these knots and figure out the right bugs and what's the ecosystem doing, and there's a fish and you're throwing to him and there he is, you're hooked up, like all of a sudden you're not thinking about your other stresses, you're not thinking about work. And I think that's so beneficial for for our minds and for happiness, is to do these things that we absolutely love to do. And so just got to plan days. Like, I've got this weekend coming up. I'm going to try to take my daughter and hike into a high mountain lake and go do a little fishing. And it'll just help clear my mind. And it's such a gift to have these things that we enjoy to do, that take our focus away from, bills and stress and construction. And, these are like my personal ones, but, just issues that you're having, and just go out and have true fun. And the deal is it's challenging, and that's the reason why I like it. It's so tough to catch these fish and to figure them out, and every day's different on these systems, and I never stop learning. I never stop improving my skill set, improving my techniques, and just to be better suited to catch these fish and to go chase them. So, man, it's super fun, and we're the fortunate ones that we found the things that we like to do. Fly fishing and being on these rivers and spending time out there. And it's a great thing that we can do with our families as well. We can go out with our wives, or we can go out with our kids, and we can go fish these different systems. And also, like, for me, it's a purpose to be able to travel to these places. So planning a family camping vacation, you can bet I'm around a system of water that I can go fish early in the mornings or go hike into in the afternoons. And so I can kind of plan my trips, whether we're traveling down to Wyoming or down to Idaho. Like, man, I really want to check out this system. I think we'll go camp on this system. It just gives me so much purpose. And I absolutely love it, as I know you guys do too. So, and it's just getting out and getting that experience. Experience is the best teacher, and that's on the river as well. And also, just fishing with different people, and it's fun to take out beginners and fish with them, but to really build some of these friendships around fly fishing. I learned so much from my buddies, and then just willing to share information with me, and so we'll be on a river or on a lake, and we'll be talking about a different system or something that he figured out or something that works for him, or see a different technique. And so, fishing with good fishermen, you just pick up knowledge along the way, and it improves your own skill set. So it's just this super fun endeavor that I'm absolutely in love with, and so just need to spend more time doing it. I had a great season or a great spring. I get this way in the summertime when I get busy with work, as I start yearning for being on the rivers more and finding more adventure. But it'll come with time. Get this work done, and I'll be out before I know it. And then it's just taking advantage of the time I do have. For years there, working so hard, like I started this construction company, and you think you'll have more free time. And in the beginning, you actually have less. You're so responsible for the projects you're doing and being there day in, day out. and I had to put my focus on there. It's like what pays my bills and keeps my family in their house and creates this lifestyle. And so like at first like it's frustrating because I don't feel like I have a lot of time. But in the same breath, like only work till 5 or 6 o'clock. I've got every evening. I've got weekends off or sometimes in the middle of summer I'm working Saturdays, but I still got Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening. I've got Sunday off, and then I've got evenings off throughout the week. And we just, we're all guilty of it, of coming home in the evening and being tired and sitting in front of the TV or not being productive. Maybe it's getting dinner done or, taking care of the kids or whatever. But in that same breath, like a guy can make time a day a week or a couple days a week that just when I get off work, I got my rod with me. I'm going to go fishing for a couple hours. And I never regret it going fishing in the evenings. I always feel better after going. And so, it's just making the time. Like we all have to work and make money, but there is a lot of free time there that if we're creative, we can take advantage of, whether that's evenings, whether that's weekends, that's our time to go enjoy ourselves. And so, throw that rod in the truck and go in the evenings. And like I say, experience is the best teacher. The more you fish, the better you're going to get. If you want to be really good at fly fishing, spend a lot of time doing it. And also planning these trips, but just taking advantage of what's around us too. And so, I can definitely be better about that as well. This summer I just haven't done very well going on my evening trip, so I need to do more of that. Hoppers are just starting to turn on. I like to throw some hoppers, fish some more still water here, and so, I can definitely make some improvements on my end too. But man, it's super fun. It's super fun to have this thing that we love to do, that we continue to improve at and continue to learn. And so, I'm just excited for the season. Like I say, it was my best spring and early summer season I've ever had. I'm going to make sure that I plan a lot of time for next spring and summer season to go chase these things around, and also want to get out a bit in the fall. The fall fish is really good. I'm just so busy with hunting season usually, but there again, just making the time and getting out on the system and finding serenity, finding peace out there, it's just a great place to be. So make sure to get out, go get that experience, as it's the best teacher out there, and go enjoy yourself. Go do some fishing, and even if these rivers are on restriction, start finding some of these colder water systems, the big water systems, or find some still water that you can hike into and go do some fishing, and bring your family along as well. It's one of my proudest moments is to have my girls that like to fly fish and go with me, and I just want to continue to build that relationship as they get older. It's something that we can enjoy forever. Like go on some of these adventures and invite them along to come with me. Or, it's just a day where we can get out and go enjoy ourselves. And man, I have some of the best conversations with my girls, like when we're out fishing, because you just, you got to drive to and from the location. And so that's quality time. And then just being out on that water and spending that many hours, you just get in some in-depth conversations, and I get to really know my girls, like when we're out doing that, even more so than when we're at the house and we have so many distractions. And so it's real important to me to continue to get these girls out and have these adventures with them and have these in-depth conversations, because you're trying to mold them and mentor them, to be productive little adults and to grow up into good people with good ethics and good morals. And I'm able to do a lot of my best work, like when we go on some of these adventures. It just seems like they're receptive to it, and so I love doing that with my girls as well. But with that, gosh, I better get my work done so I can get out in some evenings, get out this weekend. But yeah, thanks you guys. I appreciate the support of Eastmans Fly Cast. Appreciate the support of Avid Max. Make sure to check them out if you need anything fly fishing, and get out there and go have some fun. And check in with you here in a couple weeks.